So, welcome back, everyone, and welcome to this session on the future for the cruise and maritime retail sector in the Americas, where we'll talk not just about crisis, which in effect meant a hard stop for this business for over a year, but also about the outlook and the role of cruise lines, retailers, and brands in shaping that new future. Cruise sector, of course, has been among the hardest hit by the pandemic, closing down around the world last March, also amid a wave of negative headlines, and only recently taking its first gradual steps to reopening. So, in this session, we'll look at the path to reopening and eventual recovery and bring you the views of four leading players in this market. We'll hear their thoughts on what recovery means and looks like to them, how they've reevaluated their companies, strategies, and cultures, and how they're planning for the consumer of tomorrow. Also, how partnerships within the industry will need agility and flexibility to cope with the demands of building back again. Now, we'd be pleased to address your questions and comments. These you can put through the Q&A button on the screen as we move along. But to join me for this session, I'm very pleased to welcome Starboard Cruise Services President and CEO Lisa Bauer, Harding Deputy Managing Director Mark Burney, Heinemann Americas CEO Nadine Heubel, and representing the port retail sector, SMT Duty Free Executive Vice President Eddie Ferenzi. Welcome all. Now, in preparing for this session, we asked each of our speakers to deliver some initial thoughts on the market today, a snapshot of what they think recovery and tomorrow might look like, the cruise experience, the changing guest profile, and also about how the industry itself needs to change. We'll play that for you now, and that will help frame the conversation that follows. So can you roll the videos, please?
Last month marked a year where the world was disrupted and came to a halt. It's been a year filled with uncertainty and endless challenges, both for our businesses and for our people. Never in the modern world has the whole of humanity faced a single common enemy that affects each of us as personally as this. Never. In our industry, the interruption of our business operations, the disruption in our daily lives, and above all, the well-being of our people have been at the center of this crisis. But we are also seeing how COVID-19 is fueling the next wave of innovation and shaping businesses for decades to come. Last year, I read an interesting article on black swan events such as economic recessions and pandemics, and how they changed the trajectory of governments, economies, and businesses, altering the course of history. Remember how the SARS pandemic of 2002 to 4 catalyzed the exponential growth of a then small e-commerce company called Alibaba and established it as the forefront of retail in Asia? This growth was fueled by underlying anxiety around traveling and human contact, similar to what we have experienced as a result of COVID-19. The financial crisis of 2008 also produced its own positively disruptive side effects. Think about Airbnb and Uber shot up in popularity across the West as the crisis meant lower savings and income for the masses, forcing people to share assets in the form of spare rooms and car rides in order to earn extra cash. Also rising out of that period was the evolution of the video game business model to the free-to-play business model. This is such a powerful lesson for us all, and at Starboard and Onboard Media, we use the pause in operations as an unprecedented opportunity to evaluate our business, our culture, our future, and ultimately our purpose. The silver lining for us in this crisis, it's given us the time to reflect and create a powerful, purpose-driven strategic roadmap to take our organization and our business to the next level. Our journey started last summer with some deep soul searching on who we are and what our essence is. We recognize the unique position in which we operate, partnering with brands and cruise lines to honor what makes your brand special and desirable, serving a very wide range of guests across age, regionality, household income, shopping preferences, just to name a few. Looking for an archetype that embodies this unique role we play, we concluded that at Starboard and Onboard Media, we are alchemists. We transform moments for the better, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary to create elevated impact and value. As alchemists, we work across the world with you, the best brands and partners, to create these extraordinary retail experiences that are embedded into our guests' vacation. It's all about curation, so it came very naturally to us to land on our purpose, to curate a vibrant world. We also identified certain commitments to deliver across all our key stakeholders, our employees, our partners, including all of you, and our guests. Moments that matter and memories that last. For example, keying into a large percentage of guests on board celebrating a special milestone or a memento from a destination. Going above and beyond in all we do, including building and maintaining strong business partnerships. Keeping it fresh by living agile, because if there's one thing this past year has taught all of us, it's the need to be flexible and be able to switch gears on a dime. Let me share a few examples of how we're putting agility into action. Managing inventory wisely. We're keeping a pulse on what options consumers are being presented with across retailers, especially in travel retail, and the areas of product and value. As pre-COVID, we will continue to offer our guests great values, and in some cases, deeper values and discounting to move through specific product categories while balancing newness. Adapting our learning and development opportunities for primary delivery through a mobile app. Initially created for our shipboard teams, the app is now available to our shoreside teams as well, offering a continuously expanding curriculum. Most recently, as examples, for Women's History Month, we launched a Women in Leadership module where management skill development are available to our outstanding women professionals wherever they are. Plus, the app offers training on brands, product knowledge, selling skills, and more. What does this mean to you, our partners? It means we have the vehicles to help you get your brand and product message out across the world, so every interaction with your brand is consistent and additive to your brand's strength. Finally, living agile also means developing the muscle to test and learn. Limited time experiences are a new initiative built with this in mind. LTEs, as we call them, benefit all our stakeholders by offering newness, exclusivity, and limited availability to our guests. Plus, it's an innovation lab for existing and new brand partners, where you can launch new product lines, explore new category expansions, and test groundbreaking concepts that create excitement and new sources of sales. So please take this as my personal invitation to each of you. We're here to support you on testing new ideas with a holistic format to test and learn together. Other considerations we crystallize through this work on our company's purpose, including asking ourselves, how do we want our employees, our customers, and our partners to feel when they interact with our organization? One of the first words that resonated powerfully was elevated. We are challenging ourselves every day to offer shopping that is worth bragging about. One new example I'm pleased to share is the introduction of artisanal luxury for our luxury cruise partners. Curated products unique to the destinations we visit, featuring the craftsmanship and creativity of local artisans. The other word that rose to the top was wanderlust. How lucky are all of us that we get to be part of cruise guests' wanderlust and fulfilling their bucket lists. And the final word we rallied around was thoughtful. What does that look like? It's where we all might say, Starboard gets my brand, my products, and we aim for our employees and end consumers to feel that way as well. Finally, and likely most importantly, came the work to articulate our values, the foundation that drives our ethics, behaviors, and decisions. Helping us distill what really matters were the results from the first ever Lvmh Survey, gaining valuable employee feedback from over 160,000 employees all over the world. One of the many powerful statistics that emerged from the survey was that 96% of our team members expressed pride to be part of the company. They also rated Starboard very highly on how the company's ongoing efforts around the quality and frequency of our communication. The underlying element of that communication was transparency. We shared what we knew, even when the news wasn't great. And that transparency extends externally in our no-nonsense rapport with our cruise line and brand partners, aligned in our common goal to bounce back as quickly and responsibly as possible. Now, transparency is codified as a core company value. I am in awe of the strength of our industry and our collective courage. Through this past year, we rediscovered the value of having grit. From disembarking and repatriating over 2,000 shipboard team members, shifting our shoreside teams to work from home essentially over a weekend, continuing to build strategies for new ships coming down the line, managing daily business needs, finding mutually profitable paths forward with our partners, and being told for the 10th time that week, you're on mute. It takes grit. We continue to embrace grit as a core value, remembering that tough times don't last, but tough people and teams do. The third value we formalized is curiosity. For while we need the real-world grounding of transparency and grit, we always want our team actively seeking possibilities. Over the past year, I've watched this play out with the development of a new digital strategy that will enhance the shopping experience, new brands and products that align with our cruise line brand essence and their specific guest profiles, as well as rethinking systems and processes to help us all work more effectively and efficiently. And finally, the key value to all of our success is our ability to move forward together, embracing diversity of experience, skills, background, and thought, because we understand that our differences are precisely what make us stronger. And our team can do their best to reimagine retail when they feel welcomed and encouraged to bring their authentic selves to work daily. Working cross-functionally inside our company to build and execute holistic strategies. Aligning our product and cruise line partners, mutually profitable cruise retail where we can win. So in summary, we've been living through a black swan event. We are forever changed, disrupted, and provided an opportunity to rethink what we do, setting ourselves up for thriving going forward. At Starboard and Onboard Media, we use this time to reflect and set our course for the future. Our LVMH Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton heritage and the access that comes with that, as well as our stability in the market, come with multiple silver linings that we want to extend to you in this new landscape. This is an invitation to join us. We invite you to join us on this journey of wanderlust, building on respect and trust to generate value, enduring value. We invite you to join us and our guests to delight our guests on their voyages to over 1,000 destinations we visit with them. Together, let's embrace curiosity, transparency, and a hefty dose of grit. Join us in our purpose to curate a vibrant world. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Mark Burney, Deputy MD at Harding Retail, and it's a pleasure to be here at the Summit of the Americas with you today to talk about cruise. So I've spent almost 23 years in cruise retail, and the last 18 has been with Harding. And across that time frame, I've experienced many changes, but nothing could have prepared us for the last 12 months, an incomparable year where the industry has been paused. However, in recent days and weeks, there's been a marked change. The ship's engines are starting up and the pause button is about to move to play. Over the next few minutes, I'll let you know how the industry is faring today, what the restart will likely comprise of, changes for the cruise consumer, and finally, a look to the future. So the voyage to restart has been complex, fluid, and ever-changing, particularly over more recent weeks. From a complete pause globally to our friends at MSC, AIDA, Costa and TUI Germany, leading the way in getting operations up and running in a COVID-safe way in Europe. As I prepared this update, we were continuing at Harding to sit patiently, waiting for restart dates to be confirmed, and then, within the space of a week, news from the UK and the US that operations were finally starting to kickstart. For North America, cruise lines have been busy preparing their ships for restart under the first set of CDC guidance. This was, however, dependent on a second set of CDC guidelines, which, as of the time I'm speaking to you, had not been issued. So, in a nutshell, the US cruise lines are unable to sail in and out of US ports until this guidance has been issued. But where there's a will, there's also a way. For the Americas, several cruise lines have opted to start up operations outside of US ports. For example, Royal Caribbean and Crystal Cruises will commence in June and July, sailing from the Bahamas. Crystal exclusively around the Bahamian Islands only, but Royal Caribbean will sail to other Caribbean islands, including Cozumel and Barbados. Celebrity Cruise will home port from St. Martin, with trips to the Caribbean also scheduled to launch in July. We look across to Europe next, where operations have been continuing really since July 2020, with TUI Germany, AIDA, Costa and MSC all successfully sailing in the Mediterranean and Canary Islands and continue to do so today. In more recent developments, the UK, which is the world's third largest source market, has been given the green light for UK coastal cruises to commence from mid-May. This is in line with the lifting of the current lockdown restrictions, which have been in place since late December 2020. Already, P&O Cruises, Cunard, Princess, MSC, Fred Olsen, Saga and Viking have all confirmed restarts of operations from late May through to early July. Asia, in a similar stance to Europe, some small operations have been up and running over in Singapore and also out of Hong Kong, with both Genting, Star Cruises and also Royal Caribbean operating since the back end of last year. There are no further updates in this region currently, but we expect this to change in the imminent future. And finally to Australia. Whilst no major restart has commenced in the region, Scenic are the first cruise line to announce coastal cruises along the Australian coastline, which will commence from mid-June. So from an industry that has been on hold for well over a year now, the engines are being started and we're finally starting to see the ships return to the open seas. But how will things be when the ships restart with guests on board? Restart will follow a similar pattern that has been well established over the last few months. Most cruises are planned to be of short duration, from 2 to 3 days up to a maximum of 7. The trips are likely to remain close to home and comprise of coastal cruising around the home country with little to no international movement between countries. The trips are likely to be for the local market only to start up with. For example, Italian nationals only are sailing on Costa, and from the UK, only UK nationals will be able to sail on P&O and Princess and Saga. Much will evolve over this area in the coming months as the vaccine programs roll out globally, which should eventually lead to a widening reach of where the ships can go. Whilst on board, a safe bubble is created within the ship, which incorporates testing pre-cruise, at embarkation and throughout the sailing. Social distancing measures are planned to be in place, similar to what you would see on land. And importantly, enhanced training for all crew members on health and safety protocols is of paramount importance. Demand is surging. If you think about it, over 29 million people took a cruise in 2019, and 60% of the industry is from repeat travellers. So there is a significant base of loyal and committed cruisers out there who are waiting to get back on board and back out onto the open waters. Recent booking data has confirmed this pent-up demand is clearly evident. Oceania's 2023 round world voyage sold out in 1 day after going on sale. Carnival bookings for 2022 are better than 2019. And Crystal Cruises sold over 4,000 cabins on the opening day of voyages being put on sale from the Bahamas. It's likely to be that in the midterm, World Cruise, Expedition, Antarctic, private islands and new destinations and new itineraries will be on the top of people's travel lists. And looking what is happening over in the UK market, things have really ramped up in recent days. As the vaccination programme accelerates here, UK coastal cruises have been given the green light to begin sailing from the middle of May. Within the space of a week, you have P&O Cruises, Cunard, Princess, MSC, Viking, Fred Olsen and Saga all announcing plans to sail on UK coastal cruises. The earliest starting at the end of May, when Viking will name its newest ship, Viking Venus in Portsmouth before starting a series of 3 coastal cruises around the UK. The levels of interest in these trips has been unprecedented, a sign of what will come when the Americas finally opens up. So what will the cruise look like when it returns? Certainly in the short term, there's been much discussion about how we will operate in a safe environment. In the initial period, we expect there'll be a high number of experienced cruisers taking the first voyages. New to cruise may take some time to lure back. However, the shorter itineraries do favour this segment. Health and safety for all guests is of paramount importance. Cruise is expected to follow similar protocols to land, including social distancing measures, PPE, and limits on occupancy will be in place to start up with. There are currently mixed ways that the vaccine is being looked at. Royal Caribbean and Celebrity have both mandated that guests and crew will need to be vaccinated in the early sailings to the Bahamas. A similar stance from P&O Cruises and also from Saga. MSC, however, will continue to operate its existing protocols by adopting a testing strategy pre and during the cruise. Vaccines are not a requirement to sail on board MSC today. This will undoubtedly change over the coming weeks and months as each country rolls out their vaccine programs and governments look to establish a route back for international travel. A bonus on the retail side is on these trips, there's limited opportunities to shop on land. That, coupled with holiday wallets waiting to be spent, can only be good news for sales. So a little about the consumer mindset and how that's changed. Throughout the last 12 months, many things in all of our lives have changed. Our working regime, our place of work, and how we go about our day-to-day lives. All of this has and will continue to influence the consumer mindset. There are some subtle shifts occurring and changes to be prepared for when cruise retail reopens. A heightened awareness globally for well-being. This had been on the rise pre-COVID and is continuing to be a key part in purchase and service considerations around the world. The consumer is looking for products or services that enhance this part of life, whether that be a personalised experience or a brand or a product that can improve comfort, health, and happiness. As we've seen in our day-to-day lives, health and safety is of paramount importance to us all. Creating a safe and welcoming retail environment for guests and crew on board is a critical consideration. From the guest view, they need to feel reassured that the crew have been invested in with significant training and development programs by their employer. This helps to create that safe and happy retail environment and space for them to shop in. Brands, products and people that have a sustainable story to tell are engaging the consumer to newer levels. The credentials of where a product was sourced, what materials were used, and that the people who produced them worked in a secure supply chain are of equal importance to price and promotion. Our retail teams need to be at the forefront here and be engaged and knowledgeable about these brands and be able to convey their stories and messaging. Ocean and marine conservation has been high on the agenda globally for some time, and being able to support these efforts brings a new attribute to purchase considerations. And finally, a move to more personalised service takes the guest experience up another notch, particularly if there's some caution about being in the bricks and mortar environment or in spaces where there may be small crowds. Personal shopping, one-on-one consultations and private viewings are some of the options we have on board. Digital can also help support these efforts. A click and collect service, pre-cruise or during the voyage, have been developed by Harding in readiness for restart. So we'll look to the future. One thing is definitely for certain, the future is bright. 29 million people cruised in 2019, and at that point, the prediction for 2025 would see 40 million people sail. This may have been stepped back slightly in terms of timescales, but still today, there are 103 new ships on order to a value of $70 billion US. This will add another 500,000 berths by 2027, with all of the major operators having ships under construction. Up to this point, no new build orders have been cancelled. A delay in launch appears to be the only impactor, many of which were due to the yards being closed for extended periods, particularly during the first COVID wave. This year alone will see 26 new ships delivered, including Carnival Mardi Gras, the largest ship ever built for Carnival Cruise Line. Virgin Voyage's second ship, Valiant Lady, joined Scarlet in the fall, and Royal Caribbean's Odyssey of the Seas starts service in June of this year. Cruises still seem to be the best travel retail opportunity to engage with the consumer. So the impacts of COVID have been felt globally. It's been a challenging 12 months for many industries. Cruise with its extended pause has arguably suffered more than most for a longer time frame. However, there is light on the horizon. With the vaccine playing a key part to getting life back to normal, the opportunity for cruise on restart is significant. I touched on earlier the clear pent-up demand that there is for cruisers to return, many of whom have not the opportunity to shop, travel retail in over a year. COVID has fast-tracked us to optimise the physical retail experience, and that will generate sales through talented specialists. This really is a golden moment for cruise retailers, brands, and our partners. In summary, it's been a whirlwind 12 months for cruise, with most operations paused whilst the world battled with the COVID pandemic. But the tides are starting to turn. Cruise ships are getting their engines started and readying to be back in the waters imminently, bringing memorable vacations back to the millions of dedicated and loyal consumers who have missed out over the last year. Demand is there, capacity is there, capability from the retailers with all that we have learned in this past year gives us great cause for an optimistic outlook. The lessons learned in the last 12 months means any cruise retailer should be more knowledgeable, working hand in hand with their partners to take the fear out of shopping while cruising and add back the fun, safe fun. Thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure to be part of the Summit of the Americas and bring you the latest updates for cruise. We are all looking forward to a brighter future on the open seas. Thank you.
Good morning from the regional headquarters of Heinemann here in sunny Miami, where according to national media, everybody wants to move these days. During the first COVID lockdown last spring, I, like so many fellow Americans, discovered my passion for cooking and baking, especially variations of bread and vegetarian dishes. I also discovered that my kitchen equipment needed some urgent upgrades. And while all non-essential retail business was closed, I was fascinated how fast a company like Lvmh Sonoma adapted to the new reality. Every week, their website would feature new cooking and baking ideas targeted to this new normal we were all living in, with the option to order equipment online and pick it up for curbside delivery at my local Lvmh Sonoma store. This is how I found this magic spoon. You put in an egg, dip it into water, and a couple of minutes later, you have a wonderful restaurant-like poached egg. Needless to say that this was not the only thing I bought. I spent a lot of money at the store, and now I have an extremely well-equipped kitchen. Today, I'm going to talk about what we can learn from the most successful land-based retailers and brands and why it is so important, especially in the cruise channel, to elevate the retail experience in a post-COVID world. We will discuss exciting initiatives to transform retail on board, but also the changes which I believe are essential to unlock revenue potentials and maximize our guest satisfaction. After all, I'm sure you'd agree with me that this unprecedented crisis is an opportunity for us all to be bold. In 2018 and 2019, a time which now seems so far away, doesn't it? I had the privilege to sail on some of the most outstanding new cruise ships. What fascinated me most was the focus and innovation in so many areas, especially in entertainment and food and beverage. Believe it or not, I visited my first ever 3D cinema aboard the Carnival Horizon, where I dived into the fascinating world of gorillas. And I had to admit to myself that I was too much of a coward to try the zip line on the MSC Seaside. And I found myself cheering my colleague, who was racing a go-kart on the Norwegian Encore. I enjoyed a sundowner drink on the magic carpet on the Celebrity Edge, had a wonderful steak dinner at the Crown Grill on Sky Princess, which was voted Best Cruise Ship Steakhouse by USA Today. And I enjoyed my first cocktail, a strawberry margarita, entirely made by a robot at the Bionic Bar on Royal Caribbean's Symphony of the Seas. And my list could go on and on. And while I saw some beautifully designed retail shops with an inviting assortment, I never felt that retail was keeping up with the level of innovation which we see in the other areas. What we did not see were retail features showing up in the launch press releases of the cruise lines. And we also did not find retail being mentioned when the other new elements were being touted with pride in any of the naming ceremonies. So, we have some of the most forward-thinking companies, the cruise lines, us, their retail partners, and our brand partners working together, but somehow we don't seem to be pulling it off compared to other aspects of the industry. To me, the answer to the cruise line retail challenge is very simple. The current financial model used by the cruise lines and retailers are not made to encourage innovations, and neither are the current model designed for a customer-centric retail experience. Since COVID came onto the scene, the pause in operation gave me and my team a lot of time to think about our traditional financial model in the cruise industry and the new customer-centric focus in land-based retail. And we realized if we want to keep up with what is currently happening in the domestic markets, we need to act now and we need to act together. So, what is currently happening in the domestic market? On the one hand, some of the biggest and oldest retail companies are going out of business or under a Chapter 11 administration. You've seen the news about Nordstrom, JCPenney, Sears, just to name a few. What they all have in common is their lack of focus on innovation. And on the other hand, you see many companies succeeding and reaching record sales because they have transformed their business model and focus. It's primarily because of new digital concepts. Good examples are Ulta Beauty and Kohl's, and Williams-Sonoma, as I mentioned at the start. According to Digital Commerce 360, the online share of total sales of US retailers increased from 15.8% in 2019 to 21.3% in 2020. That roughly 6% increase during COVID was mainly driven by sales from the company's websites or social media platforms like Instagram or TikTok. Another trend we see is also an enhanced focus on luxury, but luxury redefined. What's happening is interesting new co-branding partnerships. Consider the new co-branding partnership of North Face and Gucci, resulting in a collection for men and women which includes ready-to-wear, accessories, footwear, and equipment. The examples I've shared with you today underline the main message for us in the cruise industry. Never waste a good crisis, and especially not one which is so profound and unprecedented. In Heinemann's 141 years of history, you can imagine that we have gone through many crises. Each crisis made us more successful because we allowed ourselves to challenge the status quo. The abolition of intra-European duty-free in 1999 was the reason why we founded Travel Free, which is today one of the world's most successful border shop companies. I am here today to encourage you to envision how all of us will be able to say that something good came out of the pandemic when we look back on this existential COVID crisis. I am convinced that we can be as innovative on board in the future as retail companies are on land today. At Heinemann, we are working on initiatives to use our physical retail spaces as a doorway to digital experiences. And these initiatives go far beyond a simple app integration. Instead of just coexisting on the high seas, we are looking to integrate retail into the whole ecosystem of the cruise ship. For the customer, think about buying the sushi knife set for home delivery, which they saw being used in a sushi restaurant on board. Or imagine a digital liquor store where the educational experience is fully digitized. You touch on a product on a screen and learn all the details about how Scottish whiskey is made. On the Mardi Gras, the newest and largest Carnival cruise line ship to be launched this summer, we are working with in-store cameras to get first-hand insights about footfall, access by gender, age group, demographics, and other valuable data, which will help us to maximize the in-store experience for all guests. On Royal Caribbean's Odysseys of the Seas, we have partnered with L'Oreal to launch the first virtual makeup assistant at sea. Guests can virtually try on their favorite lipstick without ever touching a product or talking to a shop assistant. However, to be able to fully capitalize on the retail experience of tomorrow at sea, we need to rethink our partnership model. Minimum guarantees, high concession fees, and short-term contracts will never allow the retailer to plan long-term, become customer-centric, and think out of the box. What we need is a partnership model that is based on sharing success and risk with a much longer time horizon. While short-term minimum guarantees might give a certain financial security to the cruise line, it will for sure never allow retail innovation to elevate to the same levels as the rest of the remarkable activities on board. It will continue to prevent our ability to achieve maximum revenue potential and maximum guest satisfaction. We all know that cruise ships will continue to sail and be enjoyed as COVID vanishes. We can look ahead to more amazing new ships being launched. Going forward, it needs to be our joint mission to make sure that in the near future an updated, upgraded retail is part of the initiatives so proudly promoted and celebrated by the cruise lines. I am certain that this cruise retail transformation will happen when the cruise lines work with us to redefine a decades-long partnership model, a model that was not designed for the needs of the new today and tomorrow. And this game-changing retail transformation will happen when our brand partners commit to bring innovation from their local markets not only to the airports, but to our cruise channel as well. While we know that cruising is coming back gradually over the next 12 to 18 months, the results from our new retail undertaking will also roll out gradually. At the same time, it's the ideal opportunity to try out these exciting new concepts, repurpose certain spaces on the ships, define processes, and elevate the product knowledge and sales techniques of our retail staff. I don't know how you feel about this idea, but I am so ready to do it. And I'm so ready to be back on a cruise ship, sailing and selling.
Good morning, my name is Eddie Ferenzi and I am representing SMT Duty Free. Before we begin, allow me to thank the Moodie Davitt Report for putting this knowledge hub together and for arranging for all the conferences and debates and presentations that we've been enjoying during this year's virtual Summit of the Americas. So let me briefly introduce who SMT is. We are based in Miami, Florida, where we are cruise ship chandlers servicing most of the major cruise lines of the world. In addition to that, we operate 11 stores in Old San Juan, Puerto Rico. The stores are situated inside the cruise ship terminals and catering exclusively to cruise ship passengers. In addition to that, we operate 3 stores at the Aguadilla Airport. Now, when we think of the size of the business, pre-pandemic, we experienced worldwide 32 million cruise ship passengers a year. A market that we are totally focused and totally dedicated to. So that leads us to post-pandemic times and the impact the pandemic has had in our business. Let me start by talking about the impact it has had in our airport operation. We operate a small regional airport with about 600,000 departures a year. So we were closed for many months, but for the last few weeks, we've been fortunate enough that the airport has been in operation. And in a regional setting, in a regional airport where you have maybe 8-9 flights a day, it's easy to reach a recovery because you don't have multiple flights that you can cancel. So we've seen a lot of the flights, almost all of the flights returning. Now, the situation with the cruise lines, it's a little bit different. The cruise lines, we are now going in about exactly 1 year anniversary that the stores have been closed. The CDC took over the decision of whether the cruise lines could or could not cruise from U.S. ports, and this has been devastating. We haven't seen a single ship other than a momentary ship that comes for refueling or restocking of the crew members. The way it looks now, the cruise lines seem to be experiencing very high booking rates. They're having booking rates for 21 and 22 that are much higher than what they experienced in bookings for 19 and 20. But there is no doubt that the impact has been devastating for the travel retail. So finally, let's talk about the path to recovery. The recovery is coming. The recovery has started, and the recovery is going to be a very fast curve. Needless to say, with this recovery, it's still going to take all of us in airport retailing and in cruise ship retailing and in downtown retailing. It's going to take us a good 2 years to be able to recover the losses and the lack of business we've experienced. Now, with the recovery, the cruise lines are pushing harder than anybody else. And it is the CDC that's holding the cruise lines from being able to cruise from U.S. ports. Now, the cruise lines have very creatively come up with new home ports, unfortunately outside of the U.S., but they've selected Bahamas as a new home port. They've selected St. Martin as a new home port. They've selected Bermuda as a new home port. And they're considering Barbados as well as Puerto Plata in the Dominican Republic. The message to the government or to the CDC is we are ready to cruise. We have safety protocols in place to ensure safe travel. The CDC has got to lift the sailing ban. The cruise lines have invested time and effort, money, lots of money, in order to get cruising to a safe level. Enormous amount of the population has been vaccinated. An enormous amount of the population has had COVID. So this idea that we're going to reach herd immunity by the summer is real, and we are witnessing it. So the CDC hopefully will ease the restrictions and they'll lift the no-sail orders with the cruise lines. Now, as far as recovery, we see from some of the airports and one of our airports as well that people are happy to travel. People are ready to travel. They are looking forward to traveling. They are looking forward to bringing their lives back to what it used to be. People have postponed. They put their life on hold for a year, and they're ready. And the bookings indicate it. The air travel is starting to indicate it. The airport authorities, the port authorities, suppliers, airport operators, terminal operators, downtown operators, travelers, customers, we are ready, and we are ready for the recovery, and the recovery has started. People are looking forward to bringing back life to what we knew it before the pre-pandemic. So I think the recovery has started, and that the recovery, again, will be faster than anybody had anticipated. Thank you.
Yeah, great message from Eddie to conclude there. We're ready. I think that's a good message for all of us to take forward. Look, I'd like to start just by thanking each of our speakers for addressing the theme in such a forward-looking and open way, and with such candor. There's a lot there that should encourage us to think afresh about the future. And I think between you talked at various points about the new experience, a changed consumer mindset, obviously new drivers of purchase, rethinking the mix and the offer, the impact of crisis on staff and supply and partnership, and importantly about disrupting the cruise model to make it fit for the future. And in the short time we have, we'll try and get to some of those as well. I want to talk briefly about the restart, the consumer and the offer first, addressed by each of you in different ways. Lisa, I know when we spoke last year at the Virtual Travel Retail Expo, you were talking about the research you were doing into your guests, who they would be upon the return. Obviously, that return has taken us a while longer than we maybe anticipated. But what are the consumer segments you feel will be important to you in this return to sale period and beyond as the business rebuilds, first of all?
Yeah, there'll be a lot of differences regionally, but when we look across all of our cruise partners, it is clear that the loyal cruise customers and past cruisers are going to be the ones that are coming back. They're not crazy cruisers, but they have such a passion because the cruise experience is so amazing. So without a doubt, it'll be the loyal customers, the loyalty guests. And from what we're also seeing and hearing from our cruise partners, past casino guests. And, they have rich databases and they're doing a lot of incentives. So, there'll be some differences by age group, families, but the big theme really are those trusted, loyal cruisers that'll be coming back.
Yeah. Mark, you touched on this in your presentation, talked about the returning traveler, but I suppose to elaborate a bit more on that, what do you think will be their appetite to engage in the way that they did before? I mean, is uncertainty our biggest enemy here?
So I think, Lisa's right with what she said. The kind of returning cruiser is where the heart of the market's going to be when they come back. The cruise base has such a loyal following and a loyal capacity of guests that, once they get on a ship, they get hooked and they come back and they come back and they come back. One of the key components to that, though, is once they've been on board, these people then tend to have a much higher propensity to spend in some of the more higher end luxury categories, because they've built that sense of trust with the ship and with the retail environment and with our teams on board. And so if they are the guys that are driving the kind of volume of returns back into service, then I think we're well placed for when that consumer returns. And I think that consumers experienced some pent-up demand in the last 12 to 18 months, whether that's prevented them from shopping on land or shopping in a travel retail environment. I think they're ready to go. They're absolutely ready to go. And I think that they will be the guys really that will drive the volumes for us in the initial period. The new to cruise, it's interesting. I think in the initial periods, people thought that, it'd be difficult to attract people back, but certainly on some of the newer vessels that have kind of put sailings up for sale in the last couple of weeks, some of the cruise lines are reporting that they are attracting that new consumer back. So I think you will still get the mix, but it will be heavily driven by that loyal cruise guest. And that's what's at the heart and the core of our business. So I think it's a good thing in terms of where we are today. The uncertainty part of it, I think there will be maybe some anticipation when they first get back onto the ship about what the environment's going to be like, but that's in general, not just about the retail space, you know, how the COVID restrictions may or may not impact the whole retail experience and what it's going to be like on board. But I think that will be getting, you know, the more familiar with the environment, which will take a day or two. And I think once that part is overcome, it'll almost be cruising back to normal for them in that environment.
Yeah. Nadine, what's your research into the business telling you about what's going to happen with the consumer once they return as well? And do you think we might see a different segmentation of consumers as we move forward through and past this phase?
So I agree also what Mark and Lisa said, that it's mostly going to be the loyal consumer which is coming back. And I think this is putting us from a cruise line industry perspective in a very positive or advantage, because compared to maybe airports where we also kind of know that it's mostly going to be frequent travelers who are coming back, from a cruise line perspective, there is lots of data about them. If they have been past cruisers, then there is lots of information about what they shopped before, how they interact on the ship and so forth. So I think, Dermot, to answer your question about segmentation, I think that's something where we have a unique opportunity to do this together with the cruise line, to even better understand the consumer and the guest on board than we did before.
Yeah, and just one of the points that you touched on in the presentation around how we can digitize the experience, but in a way that is meaningful, not just for its own sake. And I suppose I wonder, and of course, you know, your company is a specialist across multiple channels, but how we embrace digital, is that a very different proposition on board a cruise line to what you might do at an airport, for example? And do people want touchless in the same way? I suppose that's a question more broadly about how they want to engage with the digital tools that we will have at our disposal.
Yeah, and I think from a digital perspective, it's not only about when they are on the cruise. I think it's also much more about tackling them pre-cruise. Again, because we know who the guests are, we know exactly who's going to be on a cruise ship, and like when I book a cruise, then before I go on a cruise, I know exactly what the shore excursions are going to be. I know exactly what spa treatments are going to be on the ship. I know which restaurants are going to be there, but I don't know what's actually going to happen on from a retail perspective. So for me, this is also a very important digital element, is how can we address the consumer already before the cruise, and how can we ensure that the guest knows what is to be expected on the ship from a retail perspective, but also like helping personalize experiences before you go on a ship. I mean, you book a shore excursion, you book a spa treatment. Why not booking, I don't know, specially made T-shirts for your family, which then are ready when you arrive on the ship. So I think this is an important element.
Yeah, Eddie, I guess your business is reliant on who the cruise ship passengers are and the cruise lines who they bring in. So in terms of being able to control who they are, there's not much you can do about it. But are you anticipating a return very much to that type of consumer you had previously? And what kind of services do you think they'll be looking out for, not only on board, but perhaps in your shops too?
Well, we've typically enjoyed 85% of our travelers have been North American, and we suspect that it's going to continue. I also agree that the first return passengers are going to be the loyal cruisers, which tend to be a little bit on the higher side of the age curve, which calls for higher spend, more educated spend. I think there's going to be a little bit of passion and excitement for the first wave of cruisers. When Nadine just mentioned the idea of pre-ordering shirts so they could be ready at your arrival, I immediately thought of a couple of slogans for T-shirts that, I survived the first cruise, I was the first cruise, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be a certain degree of passion that passengers will be excited that I made it first to the Caribbean, I made it first to Asia, I made it first to all the destinations, and this passion is going to create more consumerism than before.
Yeah, and just to stick with you for a moment, Eddie, you know, in terms of what you see as the mix and the breakdown of categories going forward as well in your stores, do you anticipate, broadly speaking, that they'll be mirroring what you had before? Obviously, a strong liquor business that you would have, plus other categories. Are you anticipating any change there, just because we'll have a new type of consumer perhaps coming through?
Well, we're certainly considering new categories, but we have also a reality that we have to deal with, is called inventory levels that have been sitting for a year. These were great inventories 12 months ago. They're still in demand. We're going to make sure we promote this even more actively than before, more exciting. The engagement is going to be different. Tastings are not going to be as easy. As we know from the fragrance and the cosmetic industry, the touching and the sensing is not going to be as prevalent as before. So new techniques, I believe it was Nadine who mentioned that in your project with L'Oreal, a customer can actually sample colors or products without actually touching. So we are considering new categories, and we're certainly considering new interactions within the limited amount of interaction that can take place in small areas.
Yeah. Lisa, just to continue that theme, perhaps just to elaborate on what you think will attract the new consumer with an evolved offer at sea, and I'll come to a couple of the questions that we're getting through on the chat in a moment.
Yeah, I think there'll be a couple categories that'll naturally be strong because they are loyal cruisers. I think logo will be something that will be very important because it, you know, as Eddie was just saying, it's a little bit of bragging rights about, you know, being back out there, being back at sea. So I think logo is going to be very strong, and I also think the way our staff will interact with the customers will be different. So one example I would use, you know, we've been doing a lot of testing with our ships that are operating out of Singapore. And one of the things that we've seen that is working really well are private appointments. And it's something that really wasn't done pre-COVID. And to Nadine's point, you know, we had the opportunity pre-cruise to set up those private appointments and to set them up on board. And whether the consumers are doing it because they feel safe or because they like that personal one-on-one interaction with our, you know, with our great staffs. But the private appointments have been just absolutely, you know, great thing to see. And that's something we certainly want to bring to North America. So I think it's a combination of not just the product, and Eddie brings up a very good point. I mean, we have a lot of inventory sitting from destinations in Europe and Alaska and seasons that aren't going to happen for a couple of years. So we've got to deal with the reality of that, while at the same time, I think really trying to learn from what we're seeing shoreside and from a retail perspective. You know, we have our Lvmh brands, and we've really tried to learn from them of, you know, what are those categories, what are consumers responding to? And so it's trying to find that balance of dealing with the realities of inventory and introducing some sense of newness at the same time, and having it be different experiences.
Yeah, Nadine, that is obviously an important question, that issue of how you manage stock and supply overall, and I guess that there's a two-way conversation there with the brand owners as well to be had. But that's one thing, and then the other part is just to briefly address a question we've had in from Mohammed, just about what the category plan is for the future. Will there be perhaps a refocusing in the early stage away from luxury to other perhaps more impulse categories at entry level?
You know, I think this very much depends again on the cruise line. I think you can't give really like a broad reply on saying, yeah, we're going to focus on entry level now on all the cruise line. So definitely we talked about in inventory. So this is our job together with the vendors as well, also to have discussion about what can we do from an experience perspective, you know, with the stock which is not the latest and not the most yeah, it's 12 months old, but what can we do together to still make it exciting, because it's still relevant. It doesn't mean it's not relevant anymore. we will put, and Lisa pointed out on this as well, we will put a lot of focus on logo. Logo is going to be very important for us, especially on our US cruises, because if you also look into what's happening in the local market, if you go to, like I went to Harvard University many years ago, and there was a logo store which was, I don't know, 50,000 square feet, huge logo store, many storages with co-brandings and so forth, which was fascinating. And there were so many people in there. So I do think that logo is an area which has always been a cruise category, but there is so much more to do with this category. So this is one of our focuses, to extend logo, maybe also logo for pets, and logo on with homeware, like the William & Sonoma I was talking about. So this is one area where we will put a focus on.
Yeah, Mark, you mentioned a number of different drivers that would push the consumer forward, wellness, well-being being one. What implications overall do you think that has for perhaps your category mix going forward? And I appreciate that depends on obviously the cruise line and profile that we're talking about on each ship.
Sure. And we kind of started on that sustainable social well-being road around about 2 years ago, and we developed a pretty significant proposition in particular for Virgin. It was part of the DNA of the brand, across the ship experience overall, and the retail part had to be integrated into that. So I think certainly from our perspective, we were already planning around the sustainable social and wellbeing side of things, and we have carved out a pretty robust assortment around that. It remains to be tested and trialed, because to the extent that we've done it, it really is only on Virgin, and as you probably all know, unfortunately the launch of the ship coincided with the start of COVID, so we're yet to see kind of how those range, brands, assortments, and the concepts we put together, how people are going to respond to them. But I do feel that certainly in the last 12 months, this whole COVID thing has accelerated people's view around sustainable social and well-being. And I think the thoughts around it being a more conscious purchase, maybe not for everything that they do, but it's certainly got higher up people's levels of importance in purchase considerations around sustainability. So I think we will see more of that. And I think from a Harding perspective, we are working to develop that further now into the future.
Just to turn to an important point, Nadine, you raised it, of course, but to get others' views on this, and that's really around the business model and also how it relates to innovation in the business overall. And you mentioned with all of that wonderful innovation on board in other parts of the ship, do we see this mirrored in the retail zones often enough in the look, service, and also the offer? Question really for you, Lisa. Do we see that mirrored often enough in the retail side? And can we perhaps look to a new kind of partnership model that might change this?
I think Nadine made a lot of really great points. And, to me, it goes back to what I was talking about with transparency. And, we've all been in this together. And I'm a big fan of sharing the pain and sharing the gain. So I think that, that's certainly a piece of the model. But I think there's a lot of similarities between what's happening in cruise retail and, what happened in the airlines and their catering partners, and, the models that just, that need to be rethought. And, I think that there's certainly an opportunity, and a crisis like this, I think, puts everybody in the mindset of what do you have to do differently moving forward, and how do you find win-win situations, because we want the guests to have an incredible experience. We want our cruise lines to be successful, and of course, we all want to be successful. So lots of opportunity there, and it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all. Different brands, different regions of the world. It's just really who are those partners, and I think in working with our partner vendors too as well, in terms of thinking what we do differently.
Yeah, I mean, Nadine, I suppose, you raised the idea. What conversations have you had to date, I guess, around that? And is there an appetite among the cruise lines also to address this as a serious question for them also? Because ultimately, if the consumer benefits, the proposition is a more stronger one through that partnership, then they stand to benefit too.
When I talked about like changing the financial model, for me, changing the financial model is basically only the consequence of a mindset shift. And the mindset shift for me means that we need to work really closer together as partners. We are not a third party who's operating some spaces on the ship. We are part of the ship. We are as part of a ship as entertainment is, or restaurants and so forth and so forth. And we need to tap in all opportunities which are there from a marketing perspective, from a data perspective. So we need to work really as partners and ensure that every partner does what we can do best. So the cruise lines, they know their guests, they know how to market to their guests, we know how to operate stores. So and we do have this kind of conversations, and I really believe that COVID was kind of the accelerator. We had conversations already before around, like, as I said, changing the mindset of how we want to approach this. But COVID really accelerated it, because I think there is a clear understanding we need to change, and we need to get better, because at the end we all need to make sure that the guest has a great experience, because this then translates into higher revenue.
Yeah, Mark, I think Harding has had some of those conversations around, but and I guess it does depend company by company and cruise line by cruise line. But is the model broadly really optimized to encourage retailers to be customer centric or drive innovation? And do you think there's a new disruption needed to drive a different kind of future?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's probably two things I'd like to separate. Actually, there's the kind of discussions that are a result of COVID. And obviously they're a different type of discussion, a different form of discussion that you have with your cruise line partners and brands. In terms of the commercial model or the business model of how it was and where it needs to evolve to in the future, I think, look, we've all in the industry have got our part to play in terms of how the model is and how it operates today, whether it's us, whether it's a vendor, whether it's a cruise line, we've all got our part to play in that. But I think, fundamentally, if as a retailer, we need to deliver a customer-centric model, and by customer-centric, I truly do mean that the customer is at the heart of every decision that we make. And that goes down for ranging, service proposition, look and feel of stores, the retail environment, the retail people that are on board. If we need to deliver that customer-centric model, in general, the kind of way that the model is set up today doesn't support that. It just doesn't. And I think people have to be brave, whether you are the retailer or the cruise line, to make that step into that new arena. Some of our partners have done that already. And I accept that it's, to a certain extent, it's almost like a leap of faith, because it's not tested and trialed. And there's arguments about how far you go in the first stages, and do a gradual approach till you get to that new optimum model, I think. But it definitely has to be there. Even without COVID, I think the model was outdated, and I think all of us would agree that that was the stage that it was at pre-COVID. But, as I say, if you want to go customer-centric and you really want to put the consumer at the heart of all of your decision-making and let that drive your decision-making, then the model that's there today isn't optimized. But, there are cruise partners out there and brands out there that are open to that discussion and moving towards that model.
Just a different model in your case, I think broadly, Eddie, but overall, in terms of the economics of the business that you're involved in, do you see a disruption required, needed, or on the way, or even already happened in the port retail business?
Well, in our case, we have to deal with the Port Authority instead of with the cruise line, and they've been quite supportive. In developing relationships with the cruise lines, the biggest concern is they are going to start cruising, and they're going to create these safety bubbles. Cruises that are starting now in the UK and have started in Italy and have started in Asia, they are taking the citizens of the UK only to UK ports on the vessels. In our case, when the CDC opens US ports, unfortunately, at this time, we're only operating in US ports. The Port Authority is going to have to convince the cruise lines what is safe and what is not safe to bring them back. The cruise line is certainly going to try to keep their bubble as closed and as tight as possible. They can't control who the taxi drivers are, who the bus drivers are. Are you going to take tours that are being sold locally or only on board? Are you going to go to restaurants that are restaurants and bars that are promoted on board, or that you know from a previous trip or a reference from a friend? So we need the cruise lines and the port authorities and the independent operators in the terminals and outside the terminals, in downtown or in Front Street, to cooperate and understand that we can all provide a safety level, that customers will be safe, our staff will be vaccinated, we do have the mask, we do have the safe distancing, we do have the plexis, all the things that people have learned to expect as a given. But we need to extend that safety bubble as broad as possible, as soon as possible.
Good, thanks. And just to go quickly to the Q&A, Mark's colleague James Prescott just makes the point that a lot of talk about the model needing to change. The model has changed. He says, look at what will come when the ships come back. The future is here now. The old model was in the past. The new one already exists. Just a brief message, because we have a lot of brand owners here on the exhibition side, but also visiting and listening in today. I wonder what your message is to some of them who haven't given with a year out from the business overall, or perhaps considering the value and investment in cruise and port retailing today. Would you have a message for them overall? Nadine, you touched on this a little bit in your presentation, perhaps just to go to you first.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you have seen in Mark's presentation, we will have 604 ships. I just noted this down by 2024 or maybe 2025. So yes, the industry is still in crisis, and yes, there are still not many ships out there, and we had a pause for 12 months. But this industry is going to come back, and this industry is big. And we have a captive audience, so there are many things you can do, and you can test, and you can develop a relationship between brand and guest as well. So my message would be continue believing in the channel, because the future is bright.
Yeah, Lisa, you spoke about testing and learning, and I think that was an important message overall. But beyond that, without putting words in your mouth, what would be that message to the brand owners about the opportunity to come? Because clearly everyone's lost business over the last year, and there are many who still haven't discovered the cruise sector that your company's been involved in for 60 years or so. So just really what the message is from the Starboard side.
Yeah, it's a very resilient industry. I mean, you look at how the industry has recovered after 9/11, after SARS, after Zika, the financial crisis, other things. The industry comes back like a hockey stick. I mean, this is clearly unprecedented, but it is a very resilient industry. And not only that, there's 40 new ships between now and luxury ships between now and 2027. When you listen to Arnold Donald yesterday said that their advanced bookings are 90% over what they were in Q4. And you hear, websites crashing from the demand. The demand is there. It is really going to be up to us to deliver. And, I would just encourage all the brands to think about the cruise industry as a laboratory. We've kind of coined it LTEs, or limited time experiences. And you want to launch a product, you want to test a product, you want to, put something out there in a certain region. I think all of us would be, very willing to do that. Think about category exclusives. People want things with bragging rights that they can't get other places. And, when people get on a cruise ship, they get in some kind of, mindset that they will spend money, and they want things that they can create memories, and they want things that, remind them of their destination or celebrating something. And so help us curate that, help us bring that to life on board. But there is no shortage of demand. And I will tell you granted it's a survey of 2, but the 2 ships that we have operating right now, and a third soon to be coming, the guests are spending. They're definitely spending at unprecedented levels.
Very good. And Mark, from the Harding viewpoint, I recall it's just over a year ago, I think, since I was on board the Scarlet Lady, before she, I was going to say set sail, but didn't in the end. And I know that the mix there and how you'd partner with new brands that many of which, many of us who were there were unfamiliar with overall. It just, I suppose, showed that there is an opportunity, and there is an audience out there for new brands as well as the established ones in the market. But perhaps just what your message would be about that, and beyond that to the opportunity.
Definitely, Dermot. I think, Virgin for us was I guess a new concept, a new test and trial in many different ways and areas. I think, coming up to date with where we are today, I honestly don't think there's going to be a better time than now to invest in cruise retail as an opportunity if you're a brand or supplier. I can't enforce it enough that I think what's going to happen now, the industry, once it gets back into the waters and things have settled down, the industry is going to get back to exactly where it was, if not in a stronger position to where it was back in 2019, and it's going to be back to boom time. I can't see a scenario where that doesn't happen. I think we've still got a little bit of pain to go through over the next couple of months as we start to settle down and things get back into service and back into operation. But once we're over that hump, the cruise lines investments in the new builds, and I think I mentioned it in my presentation, the fact that none of those have been cancelled is testament to their view on where the future outlook is going to be. Those ships are kind of in the order books now through to 2027 and beyond. And so now is the time. Now is the time. If you thought twice about joining cruise retail, now is the time to get on board. Definitely.
Thanks. And Eddie, from your point of view, and how do you see it? But also any particular asks of the brand owning community out there in ways that they can help your business overall?
Well, they've been very supportive for the last 12 months, and recently there's been a lot more conversation on what can we do as new promotions. So certainly trainings are now virtual. You used to have the traditional system where someone would come on board or someone would come to the town and spend hours or days training the staff, sampling. Now it's done virtually, and they've prepared themselves. They're already offering virtual trainings, which is a beginning. And we're obviously covering the QR codes for promotions, for pricing, for gifts. But we definitely have to keep talking and taking it to the next level. I think this COVID era has overexposed us and overstimulated us to visual presentations, and everything is possible through Zoom and Team and all the other medias available. So we might experience a little bit of fatigue with the consumer who's getting it everywhere, domestically, at home, at the airport, on the ship, in the towns, everywhere. So we need to work together to make it exciting, to make it fun, to make it innovative, so we fight the fatigue that could possibly come in.
Very good. No, thanks, Eddie. And an upbeat note from all of you on which to close. We've got another session coming up shortly, but I would like to thank our speakers very much, Lisa, Nadine, Eddie, and Mark, for their insights and contributions here today. They all have busy day jobs, so to prepare presentations and then to spend time coming on to chat to me is beyond the call of duty, and I really appreciate their time and also your interest as well. I think it's been a really valuable session, and despite the challenges of today, I think based on what we're hearing from each of you, there is a bright future out there for cruise and port retailing tomorrow. So look, we'll close once more with our latest messages from our friends at Somers Coffee and the Sedekar sisters in our virtual coffee break. Please enjoy the rest of the sessions today and tomorrow, and also the activity in the exhibition hub, and we'll see you later. Thank you again to all our speakers, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Seema Sedekar.
Hi, I'm Nisha Sedekar.
And we're the Sedekar sisters. And welcome back to our Somers Coffee Break here at the Summit of the Americas.
It's been so fun traveling the world and tasting all the really fun Somers coffee cocktails. Much like in our household, in Argentina, coffee is a daily activity.
And believe it or not, Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires, has a cafe on nearly every corner.
The coffee culture runs so deep that the country's Ministry of Culture has called on UNESCO to declare coffee drinking a part of the cultural heritage of Buenos Aires.
Today, we're going to show you our take on Argentina's Una Lagrima Somers cocktail.
Brew your Argentinian La Virginia or Morenita coffee in your mocha pot. Pour 4 ounces of Somers and 4 ounces of milk into the frother. Once everything is warm and ready to go, pour your milk and Somers first into the cup. Add coffee, and to finish, add an espresso shot to the center of the cup. Make sure to enjoy with an Argentinian pastry. I cannot wait to try this amazing Somers Argentinian coffee cocktail.
Me too. Did you know that Argentina is also known for their tango dancing?
Are they really? Let's go.
Oh my God, Nish, I haven't danced like that in forever.
That was amazing. Somers is really magical.
Buen dia.
Ciao.